Hello. The purpose of this video is to give you a brief introduction into one of the programs offered by HumanDymensions. This program is called Safety Culture, Observations and Conversations Workshop. What it's really about is human behaviour, why people make the judgments and decisions they make, trying to understand those judgments and then seeing how we can influence them. And there are different ways and skills and tools we can have to influence others' behaviour. But for the moment, let's look at the first slide. I often talk about this picture, which I took myself on a freeway or intersecting in with the freeway. And here we've got a courier weaving in and out of the traffic, rather dangerous behaviour. I'm not going to talk about that too much right now, except to ask the question, what is it that motivates someone to dodge in and out of traffic and risk their life? There would be a range of motivations. We're going to talk more of those in the training program itself. I'm just going to leave you that question for the moment. The program delivers particularly training focused at perception, motivation and conversations. And the rationale for the program is based on the fact that our perception is unreliable. Our human hardwiring is quite limited. And unfortunately, in many workplaces, assumption and complacency rules the day. People tend to run on automatic, and these are key psychological factors which show up in most incidents and accidents. You know, many safety tools are really valuable, and we have many in most work sites now. But unfortunately, most safety tools don't help dig beneath the surface. They don't help us tackle psychological and cultural problems and cultural hazards and cultural risks. Unfortunately, now we have so many safety systems that humans are now doing what's called a tick and flick. In other words, they're ticking the boxes, but they're not really thinking about hazards and risks. And one of the purposes of this program is, in fact, to intervene in that process. So an effective conversation really helps you draw to the surface and bring out what a person's thinking about risk, how they're assessing hazards. And these safety conversations are actually not huge invasions into the workplace. They're really just about casual, informal conversations that try to uncover assumptions and values in the workplace. Anyway, that's the rationale of the program. Let's get on with it. The program outline comes in 8 stages. We do a quiz, we look at perception and safety, we do some myth bustings, good old-fashioned myth busting. Then we look at things to do with personality and hazard development. We look at layers of the way we observe at different layers. And then we go into a lot of group work in the afternoon, doing what's called micro training, and then we close out. It's a full day program, but it's very interactive and very busy, and there's plenty to do. We start with a quiz. So I'm going to give you just one question out of the quiz, and that will make one of the first points of the program. Sometimes we give out scratchy tickets or we do different things to make this interesting, but we play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So I'll just give you one question. Which of the following of these surfaces is the most dangerous from which to eat? Is it a bathroom sink? Is it a toilet seat, a work desk or a kitchen table? Now the interesting thing is all the research shows it's in fact the work desk. The others, the bathroom sink, toilet seats and kitchen table, in fact have a place where many germs collect. And we're taught from a young age that a toilet seat's dirty, that bathroom sinks can be dirty, and that kitchen tables need to be wiped down. The funny thing about this statistic is the work desk is not often wiped down, so we're exposed to germs without much protection. The other 3 surfaces, yes, there's high exposure to germs, but we clean these regularly. So in fact, the most dangerous place in which to eat from is the work desk. You know, this fundamental rule of exposure and protection really is what should drive our conversations. Where are we exposed to hazards? Where are we exposed to risks? And how are we protecting ourselves? So in the training program, we introduce this concept of exposure and protection as a fundamental guideline to how we have conversations about risk and safety in the workplace. Another part of the program we look at is perception. And I often use clips or I use a range of different mechanisms to make the point that our perception is often limited quite heavily depending on where our focus is, how we're distracted, maybe if we're misdirected. So I'm going to show you a clip right now. It's quite an interesting clip. It's a simple whodunit. Have a look at the clip. Tell me, Who commits the murder?
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
And action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
So there you have it, a wonderful little clip that shows how our perception's limited when we're distracted. We're so busy looking at the flow of those events, we often miss at least 20 changes that happened right in front of us. Psychologists could tell you that this is because of a special thing called flow. Once our mind gets in the flow, we tend not to see things. It's how we don't see mistakes in movies and so on. The important thing is we need to know this is very, very crucial in our work site. We actually don't see things because we're distracted. We don't see things because we're misdirected, or we can't concentrate on everything, or our focus is shifted. One of the key parts of this program is once we learn this, we change the way we view a conversation that comes into our workplace. We invite an extra pair of eyes and ears in on our work. So, that's the first part of the program on perception. Now, we often talk in the program about the way our brain works. This is only one of the diagrams we refer to, but we need to realise that it's no one's fault. A lot of the reasons why we don't see things is simply because we're human. Fallible humans have particular wiring in their brains, and so this is the way it is. It's why we need spotters in the workplace. It's why we need conversations. It's why a lot of the things like safe work method statements and risk assessment tools are useful thinking tools. Unfortunately, when we're flooded with so many of these tools, we tend to go to tick and flick. And so if we're doing tick and flick with these vital tools, we're not really thinking about risk. We're running on assumption. Hence, that's why the conversation's so important. Now, one of the key parts of the program is looking at misdirection, and most of the trainers for Human Dimensions in this training do some magic tricks. So I want to just do one for you right now, and I want you to see how this is important for when we think about risk. So I've got 3 ropes here. I've got a short rope, I've got a middle rope, and I've got quite a long rope. Now, one of the important things about the way we manage risk is in fact the dependence we make upon seeing things at various times. The range of things we have to do at any one time in the average workplace is just enormous. We only need one misdirection and we don't see things. Now, one of the interesting things about this rope trick is that it happens right in front of your eyes. There really is no magic, except most magic tricks thrive on the fact that you don't see how they're done. So in this day, we do a range of magic tricks. Here's the magic tricks. See the ropes there? So I'm just going to put them together for you. The 3 ropes there. See the 3 one? They've got them there. So there's no camera tricks done here. It's just being done right in front of you. So if I grab the 3 ropes like this, I can actually even them all up. So it looks like I've made a short, a middle and a long all the same way. that trick works on the concept of misdirection. All card tricks, all tricks involving what seems to be magic, work on the concept of misdirection, and they happen right in front of your very eyes. Now, it's not magic when we don't see things on a work site. It's not magic at all. We simply have to have a simple distraction, or in fact not have a spotter, or not have someone helping us out, or miss that vital conversation, and we don't see things. We call this the 30% rule. It's one of the key parts of the training. Our perception is limited by the way we focus, by how we're sometimes distracted. In fact, sometimes we even daydream in the workplace or are misdirected and we don't see things. Unless we believe the 30% rule, this 30% rule, we will not invite someone into our workspace to in fact check our perception. That's rule number 2. Another part of the program that involves perception also talks about the way we see things differently than other people. Now, this is a little clip and something changes while you're looking at it. I'll step out of the way, have a quick look, tell me if you see the change. So did you see the building appear on the left? Did you see this building here come into place? I'll play it again for you. Some people see it, but some people don't. Let's have a look again. Here it is. Can you see it coming in slowly? If your concentration was here, you will have missed it. This is exactly how we don't see things sometimes in the workplace. And we can blame people as much as we like. We can blame people when they fall down and trip or don't see a step. But the reality is we all don't see things at the same way. And when we come together in our conversations, our pre-start talks, our toolbox talks, when we come together and we converse, we're able to share and we all help each other see things. It's just because we're combining the way we're differently wired. Now, another part of the program is called Mythbusters. And in Mythbusters, we run through a whole range of misconceptions that are believed in various work sites. And they become quite a distraction from the reality of how risk is really managed at work, how people really make decisions. I'm going to show you a clip here of a person at a wedding. Now, one of the great myths that exists on sites, all work sites, in fact, is that people believe in this thing called common sense. That you can actually make sense of things on your own, objectively, without any connection to anyone else. Common sense is really one of the great myths in the workplace. To be honest, if you don't have training, if you don't have experience, there's a lot of things you don't see. Sense is not made in common. But here's a clip. Here's a woman at a wedding. And watch her. She headbutts a building. We're going to ask the question, how does this make sense? Here she is. We'll go back and we'll watch it again. Have a look. Now, we're not going to take time to discuss it on the video now, but the question is, what is the sense making that's going on here? Why has this decision been made? See all the women behind her? None of them wanted to catch the bouquet of flowers, and yet she wanted that so badly, she bashed her head severely against the building. We need to understand what drives decision and judgments, otherwise we're not going to communicate effectively with people. Anyway, no time for group discussion, let's move on. When we talk about hazards and risks, we often talk about them not being neutral in this program. A hazard and a risk, or a source of a risk, sits on its own, and this program is not so much about the hazard, but our attitude towards it. We often think that danger increases, not because the hazards have changed, but because I think differently about it. If I don't believe something's dangerous, or I don't actually think it's dangerous, maybe it doesn't even look dangerous. Maybe I haven't even seen it. That drives overconfidence, and that's where complacency comes from. Overconfidence is one of the biggest problems we have in the workplace for managing hazards and risks. Now, danger decreases if we believe something be dangerous or not, but we're prepared to go further. If we're unsure of a risk, we actually have an effective conversation. Now, that effective conversation taps into assumptions, and it allows us to tap into that whole idea. We can hear that people may be overconfident, and then we can pick up on that. That's the difference that a conversation makes between a mindful work site and a work site where overconfidence and complacency may creep in. The problem actually is not the hazard. We know the hazard's there. It's our attitude towards it. Now, when we think of sense making, which I introduced just before, but we go in much detail in the program, I introduce the 7 key ways that people make sense of their world. 7 ways that people make decisions. There is no common sense. All of these 7 factors affect the way we make a decision. In the program, we talk about these, we practice these, and we work at how this affects the way people make judgments. We're not going to do much in it now. I'll just show you that little slide. Those are the 7 components that affect decision making. And when we go in the training program, we do an exercise that shows, in fact, that we all vary our decision making depending upon those 7 things. Rule 3 in the training program is that we need to ask and have constant conversations in the workplace about risk. Now, we have lots of group challenges. We do lots of work together. In the day, it's quite interactive. Some of it's sitting down, some of it's doing activities out in the field, some of it's doing some camera work, and you'll see in the photos here various people in the training program doing camera work. So it's a lot of fun, sometimes quite challenging. But what would the point be of a training program if we didn't actually challenge you to practice the skills which we put in front of you to develop? And of course, the key at the end of the day is, can we step up and be more effective in the way we have a conversation with someone? After all, if a work site is just about telling, who's going to listen? We have to have that exchange. Now, where does this all sit? Well, this is the risk matrix, which you'll see in many places, both in my publications, but you'll also see it around the place on blogs and on various sites. This tells us that the basic primary level of the way we manage safety is all good. It's the foundation, but we've got to step up. When we step up above that red line and we begin to take into account the way that human factors are influenced, we begin to look differently at hazards and risks. We begin to look at a new way of making the workplace safer. In fact, when we really step up and we can take on tertiary cultural hazards and risks, we really actually can become quite creative in the way we address hazards and risks in the workplace without, in fact, needing to resort to extensive paperwork. When we get to that level, when we can influence the management of risk at that level, then we can really make a difference. If we know more about the assumptions and beliefs on a workplace, we can really help people make better decisions. That makes us world class. That covers the total safety spectrum. If we stick to the bottom 5, we're really only just doing the basics. Now, Patrick Hudson's research shows that we really won't be proactive and generative unless we get above those red lines. So this training program is the first in those steps above the red line. And sometimes we call it the walk program or the talk program. In this case, it's simply about culture, observations and conversations, and part of the program really builds up people's skills in being better observers and better conversationalists. So if you decide to take on this program, you're stepping up to a new challenge, and it's a new way of approaching safety. Now, we also provide some tools in the workshop. So if you decide to do this program and it interests you in your workplace, we provide various tools. Here's a start card, for example, sometimes we give away. How do we start a conversation? What's the best kind of question we can ask? How do we ask open questions? How do we ask the kinds of questions that don't accuse people, don't blame people, but are positive and get from people a welcoming attitude? So we end up with quite a positive climate in the worksite where people are knowing and addressing various hazards and risks, not hiding those hazards and risks. So that's one tool. It's a start card. That's the other side of that card. But that's not the only tool we have. We provide a whole range of other tools and interactive activities during the day in order to help you manage the culture and observations and conversations on your worksite. If this interests you, perhaps give us a call. You'll see the number and you'll see the email address and the web address in the closing credits to this video. Thanks for your time. Keep safe.